Huh?
All right.
Bro, did you just say maybe this fit is too good?
Oh, wait,
No,
you
the
supposed to
Anon
do
is
this
fit.
like that? Like on cue?
Actually, I don't even know if
Like,
there is
for
tomatoes.
instance, when it starts.
There is. I
Otherwise,
saw
people
one
like
in the-
always
Or
putting crap
this
in
is
here.
because this
Okay,
is not
yeah.
a pineapple. It says it's not a pineapple.
Oh.
Okay.
You want me
What's the link
to-
for
Carter, come over here. Come over here, Carter. Oh,
Just
hello,
a
Quat.
developer when Q&A starts.
Alright. Here. Oh wait, no. There we go. Alright. I think I'm ready. Quat. Actually, wait, Sylv, are you on AV?
Yeah, I don't know.
Alright.
I'm
gonna send the link.
What do you need me to do?
I'm just gonna watch the presentation from my kayak.
What is even happening?
Oh, I'll enable Q&A microphone also once we do that.
The presentation.
Alright. I'm just gonna Alright. I'm gonna post in chat.
Wait, hold on.
I don't know, for some reason,
Title,
every single
command,
person's
genre.
skin is a Steve skin except for you. The only exception.
Maybe it was a bubble.
Yo, nice fucking alarm
Yeah,
timer.
you made it in everyone page.
Actually, some people's skin.
Modding from the ground up. An introduction to Cichlid.
Shrimp in
Hi,
the
Carter.
boat. Shrimp in the boat.
Shrimp in the boat. Shrimp in the boat.
Oh. Why is this not windowed?
Stereo, did you misspell Soul's name? Jaden, just eat shrimp fried rice.
Perchance.
Perchance.
So, I guess it's time to start. So, hello. This talk is an introduction to Cichlid, but before we get into that, I want to start with an introduction to me. So, my name is Jay. I've been modding for 4.5 years now. And in that time, I've worked on a good amount of projects, but a pretty relevant one is Create Fabric and its spin-off port mods. And pretty much in that time, I've used all 4 of the main relevant loaders, and I know them pretty well. More than one person should. And in my opinion, they're all kind of bad. It's all pick your poison. So we've got Forge. It's the oldest one. It has a lot of tech debt. It's got patching. It's big and bulky. It does terrible things to the class loader. Of course, we got modules. It's 2025 and we're still decompiling and recompiling. Forge Gradle, I think I don't really need to elaborate on that one. And I see some people like Deferred Register. I'm not a fan. Neoforge inherits all of that pretty much. Credit where credit's due, Mod Dev Gradle is pretty nice. The API refactors are pretty good, but they don't solve the main problems that I have with the platform. Fabric is my personal choice of poison, but it's not perfect either. I think it's kind of ridiculous that we're still using yarn in 2025. And Fabric, of course, has the internal problem of you have no clue where Fabric API is hooking because you cannot see vixens in your source code. Like, a few times I've been writing a mixin and checking the debug output, and I'll look at that, there's a Fabric API hook right above it that I could have just used, but I had no clue. And of course, it's named something that I never would have guessed. And since Neoforge split off, there's been a lot of people jumping ship, and Fabric's kind of been hemorrhaging since. Finally, Quilt. Quilt happened, and it's kind of no longer happening. Yeah. So, back to the topic of this talk. What is Cichlid? So, in addition to being the name of a family of fish, if you haven't pieced it together yet, Cichlid is a new mod loader that I've been working on. It's built from the ground up. It's a standard Java mod loader on the same level as the other ones. So I've been working on it for over a year. The code is from scratch mostly, but I'm taking heavy inspiration from all the prior art. It's still a work in progress, but it's getting pretty close to usable. So what makes Cichlid special compared to the other ones? So I'm going to go through the philosophy behind Cichlid, the actual features that I have, and a few other goals I have with the project. So let's get into it. So, philosophy, point 1. Cichlid should be lightweight and unintrusive. It should never get in your way when you're modding, and it should be pretty much invisible when you have no mods installed. It should be easy to install and uninstall, because it should barely touch the file system. Point 2, embrace vanilla. API should be additive. Extend what's there, don't replace it. It's concerning how much Forge at least used to just patch stuff out. I don't know if anyone here has seen what it does to the block placement pipeline. Like, that in particular was a massive mess for Create Fabric. It just rips the whole thing out pretty much. So go with the flow with vanilla's changes as they come. Point 3, keep moving forward. No holding on to the past. There will never be an official LTS version for Cichlid. Main development will always happen on the latest version. And nothing about Cichlid is set in stone. If a massive change would improve it, then I'm not afraid to make it. So, what makes up Cichlid? Cichlid, the name, refers to both the loader itself and kind of the general ecosystem, kind of like it does with Forge and Fabric. Cichlid Gradle is the brand new Gradle plugin, which I will get to. Cichlibs is the name of the core libraries that mods will be using, which is the Fabric API equivalent. Sushi, we'll get to that one. And of course, Gerald. So, actual features of Cichlid. Point 1, Cichlid is a Java agent. Taking some inspiration from NilLoader here. Java agents are... It has everything you need for a mod loader without having to do terrible things to the class loader. Next up, Motrap is first class. Point to Neoforge. Sorry, Fabric, you lose. Mods are compiled to Modrap. Game is remapped to Modrap in dev and at runtime. In dev and in production. and it's the only mapping set that's currently supported by Cichlid Gradle. It's planned for there to be support for other mappings in development environments, but it's really low priority. Parchment is kinda high priority, but it's not load bearing, so it hasn't made it in yet. Eventually. So, Cichlid Gradle, the new Gradle plugin. It's built from the ground up and based on modern best practices for Gradle. It's compatible with configuration cache. It does no work at configuration time, and hopefully it won't deal any psychic damage to you as you use it. So, loader plugins. This was a good idea Quilt had that never really happened because it's been locked behind a argument for forever. So, plot twist, Cichlid doesn't actually load mods. It loads plugins, and plugins load mods. So, plugins are given control over how every mod in the mods folder is handled, and they can also read mods from elsewhere. Cichlid not loading mods is a little bit of a lie, because Cichlid on its own does have built-in plugin for the standard mod format. Cichlid JS plugin. You could absolutely do that if you felt like it. That is your choice to make. So, conditional dependencies. Mods can have dependencies that only apply in certain cases, like on the client side or when a third mod isn't present. I literally implemented this in like 2 hours, to be honest. I'm not gonna lie. I am kind of surprised this isn't a thing that Fabric has done yet, because it doesn't seem that hard to do. But that's a thing Cichlid has now. So next up is Flexver, another thing that I think Quilt did pretty good. They switched to Flexver, which is a Semver compatible version comparator. It is very flexible, if you couldn't tell from the name. And it lets modders name their versions however they want, pretty much. And it's also used for like snapshot version comparison. So you don't need to do what Fabric Loader does and mangle every snapshot version until it's vaguely Semver shaped. So, Sushi. This is a big one. It is a brand new bytecode manipulation framework, heavily inspired by Mixin plus extras. It's data-driven, extensible, and flexible, but it's still very immature. There's a lot of features that need to be implemented still. So, what does it look like when you write a Sushi transformer? Jump scare inbound. It's JSON. I'm sorry, shock and horror. So, this format could also act as an intermediate, sort of like how Chasm from Quilt was supposed to be a intermediate format. You could theoretically set up an annotation processor that wires a Mixin-like interface and generates Sushi format. So why is Sushi a thing? Why am I not just continuing with Mixin and extras? So the big thing is source visible bytecode transformation. That is something that I've been wanting for a very long time, and Sushi was created primarily for that. The data format lets it be handled safely in a Gradle environment. And I'm still figuring this part out, to be honest, because it was not done in time for this talk, but it is in development. And yeah, it works for libraries and your own mod, so it acts as a replacement for access widers and interface injection. So Cichlid's Fabric API equivalent core libraries that mods will be using. It's developed modularly, but it's distributed only as one unit. Mods are not supposed to bundle it themselves. Cichlibs is still being planned, and it cannot currently be used. So that is still in progress. So some other goals that I have for the project that are not really as concrete. So error messages. Fabric is kind of known for having basically unreadable errors sometimes. And it doesn't need to be that way. Cichlid will always try to produce easily understandable errors, and it does a pretty good job right now. And I plan to keep it that way. So Cichlid will eventually have a GUI similar to what Fabric has, except not terrible looking. And that will be used to show mod loading errors like missing dependencies. Unfortunately, Swing is kind of a nightmare, as I'm sure some of us have realized with the unzip problems with the con. So that's not really viable. So I'm planning to build a new GUI framework that will just be using plain OpenGL. Yeah, unzip OpenGL does have its problems. I feel like at least some of them come from using OpenGL 1. And OpenGL to match OpenGL 3.2 to match Minecraft, since that's where Cichlid is used. So, an always accurate wiki. Quilt had an idea that never really went anywhere, yet again. Snippets shown in the wiki should be sourced from example mods. And if those mods don't pass tests, then the wiki will not be published. You cannot publish a wiki that doesn't work, which has been a consistent problem. I just tried to change the slide and click the strip. So yeah, that is Cichlid, but that's not the end of this presentation. Next up, I want to talk about some of the shenanigans that have happened with implementing Cichlid in its current form. So production remapping. Cichlid is a Java agent and does not modify game files on disk. So how is the game remapped in a production environment? Well, it's simple. Just remap each class as it passes through the transformer. There's problems with that, because for the class to go through your transformer, the JVM has to find it, which doesn't really work when a remapped class is requesting a remapped class, and the JVM goes looking for that remapped class, but it hasn't been loaded yet, so only the unmapped name is actually a thing. So what's the solution for this? Simply retransform class loader, because you can do that with a Java agent. So yeah, I simply injected hooks into the class loader itself. Like 3 minimally invasive name remaps. Like, it sounds bad, but I consider it better than outright replacing the class loader. And yeah, 60 lines of ASM for all 3 of them is pretty good. And yeah, there was a good amount of verify error trying to get that working. So next, after a class gets transformed by the various things that happen to it, like going through sushi and getting stripped of environment annotations, you need to turn that class node back into a byte array. And I do that with frame recomputation enabled, because if you don't do that, then your transformers get a lot more painful to write. The problem is, when you have that enabled, then ASM needs to know the superclass of every reference class, and it needs to know if it's an interface. So at first glance, it seems like the best solution might be to just load the class to see what its superclass is and see if it's an interface. Problem with that is the JVM will just skip transforming if you're in the middle of transforming the current thread, which makes sense. It's a reasonable thing to do, because if you don't do that, you pretty much instantly get into class-long deadlock. So, simple solution, which led to this screenshot, which, hey guys, I need a concurrency. Is it good when it does this? So, simply spawn a new thread to load the class so that it goes to the transformer. The problem is I didn't realize that that was fundamentally broken and would end up cascading through every class, loading everything at once. I don't think it would have... I don't think it stopped at 2,000 threads for any particular reason. That's just where it deadlocked. It would have kept going if it didn't. So, source visible transformations. As mentioned, they're not done yet. And a big reason why they're not done yet is because shenanigans. So, artifact transforms. But simply, it's a Gradle feature that lets you transform dependencies however you want. It sounds, at first glance, like exactly what you would want for this. But no, it is a lie. Take the shrimp again. So yeah, you do not want artifact transforms. And there's a lot of reasons for that. But there's a very big one, and the biggest one that finally made me give up on it. So, the biggest problem with them is that there is zero IDE support for applying them to sources. So, they work for, like, the jars you compile against, but for what you actually see in your IDE, it does not work. In IntelliJ, there's supposed to be an experimental toggle you can enable that would fix it, but it does not fix it. And I ended up debugging that, and I realized that was ridiculous, and I gave up. Eclipse support for this feature? I don't even know. I can't imagine it's good. I don't think Eclipse knows that Gradle is still being updated. So, testing sushi. It's pretty important that it functions correctly. I should probably unit test it. Problem, how do you unit test transforming bytecode? Answer, build your own test framework. You can see on the right how that turned out, and I'm pretty happy with it. But it did create this very funny sequence of lines that's on the left that just takes the compiled code and throws it straight to the decompiler, which feels like feeding a printer straight into a shredder. So that's pretty much everything. There's one more thing I want to comment on. What does success... What is success for Cichlid defined as? Like, obviously, I want the project to do well. That is the ideal outcome. But if the project ends up getting scrapped for parts, that's not a failure. My end goal is to make modding better, and even if it does it indirectly, then it's been a success. So, that is Cichlid. When this is done, I will be opening a thread with links to stuff in the projects thread, and you can learn more there. So, Q&A time. So, someone said, how do I get food? I am starving. There's plenty of shrimp around. I'm sure they will give you some fried rice if you ask nicely.
Why
So
do you like
Max
fish
brought
so
up,
much?
for fun. So Max mentioned in chat that the file extension is different. Yes, mods are still just jars, but Cichlid looks for files ending in .cld because there's a common problem users have where they try to execute the jar file and then wonder why it doesn't work. And that can be pretty easily avoided, I think. So that is why that's the case.
You know what that means?
Well, I have a question. When are you gonna display the fish tank?
Soon PM.
If CLD are CLD files just sparkling zips like jars are?
Yeah. Sparkling jars, which are sparkling zips, so double sparkly.
I have a sort of question. I really like what you're doing with Cichlid. It's honestly everything that I would have wanted like Miwan to be, which if you don't know is like it was a weird quilt fork, but yeah, I really appreciate this, but I have like another question sort of. So if you if Vibrant Visuals switches to like Vulkan or a different OpenGL version, will you also use that for the GUI? Like you mentioned that you're going to be on the latest version always, pretty much. So I just wanted to know that.
That is not something I've thought about, but it depends on if they actually do it. And it also depends on what versions I want Cichlid itself as a loader to support. Because the loader is like, version agnostic. Like, it's almost Minecraft, it's almost game agnostic, but it is tied to Minecraft a little bit to make it nicer. I'll just have to think about that when it happens.
Also, why don't you use something like imgui or something like that? Like I know Iris is using that, and also Axiom. So, what's the rationale?
MGUI isn't really meant. I'm pretty sure it's meant for like debugging. It's not really designed for like a production GUI, from what I know. But also, I kind of have wanted to make a GUI for a while, so might as well have an excuse, right? I have a note here that is cut off, and I cannot figure out how to open the full thing.
So for Cichlibs, what kind of event system would you be following? Would you be following the fabric style or Forge?
Definitely fabric style. I am not a fan of magic event bus. I don't like magic annotations.
What's your favorite type of Cichlid that like the fish disease?
Can you say that again? It was like echoing. Can you say that again? Trophius. Funny. Let me try a different note.
That note was me, by the way. You can probably throw the Cichlid note away.
May I? May I? What mods are you pouring to it? Will Consistency Plus be poured to Cichlid?
Hold on. There's been a server message. Will there be a compat layer for Fabric? I have had ideas for one because it would be pretty easy to make one in the way that Quilt is compatible with Fabric. Like, if you implement the API, like 99% of Fabric mods will just work, which is pretty good. It's
Will
something
you
to
be able to
considered
do
more in the
mass
future.
AS? Will you be able to do mass ASM with the transformations
Yes.
library?
I added everything class target in testing because it was funny. You can just target every class if you want.
Okay,
So
one thing.
someone wrote what? Okay, Soul.
Sorry, you want to go?
No, you can.
One thing I've noticed is that you seem to have a lot of Quilt DNA in Cichlid. You know, um, is and like, do you think that like, especially with like Quilt, that it's played a lot of like a big role in Cichlid?
Uh, yeah, but everything has. Like, all four have been influential in it. I think Quilt had a lot of good ideas, but the execution didn't happen pretty much.
I have a very cursed question. Will you be able
You
to
might have an answer.
transform other Transformer?
Well, transformers aren't Java, so you could
Ah.
transform the classes that are referenced by other transformers.
Can you transform Cichlid itself?
That is intentionally prevented, but it
Why?
wouldn't be hard to bypass it. Just for the stability of Cichlid itself.
Because at one point I have a
supposed to be
library
flexible enough
dedicated to
for-
core modding other core mods. And I was wondering, is that kind of thing possible in Cichlid?
Modifying other transformers themselves? No. But that is an interesting use case.
Does Cichlid have any kind of Transformer exclusions? Because I know in Forge, if a core mod tries to core mod itself, it ends up causing a class circularity error. Might be hated.
I don't think there. I don't know what could cause that because I don't think that's possible to happen because they're not Java. They're JSON files, so they can't target themselves.
So I know you mentioned like this project. Someone mentioned that this project has a lot of Quilt DNA. How are you going to prevent a bunch of community drama and internal drama from happening? Like, are you gonna have like actual proper communication and stuff? I don't want to bring in like quilt drama or anything, but like, is there going to be like protocols in place in case someone gets in a fight with someone else or something? Like, even if they're like in a secret channel?
I think that's something that needs to be decided if it happens. Like, right now, it's really just me on the team. I'm hoping that situation doesn't happen.
Will you be able to write the Transformers in the JSON?
What do you mean by that?
So, will you be able to write raw Java bytecode instructions to transform in the JSON itself?
That's not going to be a thing in base sushi, but you could extend it to add a transform type that could do that.
I will absolutely, when sushi comes out, I will absolutely be writing something that lets me load Java bytecode from JSON. For the third time.
Have fun with that.
The plugins sound really interesting. Like, do the plugins allow for meta programming for the mods? Like, changing how the mod loads or changing the mod itself?
So, plugins and mods are actually completely separate things right now. They're loaded from different folders. One file cannot be both. Like, I guess you could if you put the same file in both folders, but I think that will cause an error because duplicate IDs. But the point is that plugins and mods are on like different layers.
How much access to the game do plugins have, if any? Do plugins know that the game exists, or are they agnostic?
So there's nothing I can really do there's nothing I can do to stop a plugin developer from touching game classes at runtime, but they're not supposed to. What will be possible though is plugins can register transformers, which can then transform the game however they want, or transform mods however they want.
Sorry to interrupt, but you have some notes, by the way. I just wanted to let you know. There's some paper notes.
I'm gonna get to those. But
is it getting through? Like is it getting?
Are
they getting through the stage, or should I?
There's one on the pedestal, so probably.
Okay. I'll check.
So, note question. What makes Cichlid better for the average end user who wants to get started on modding Minecraft in general? Depends on the definition of end user. If the end user is a player, then my opinion has always been that you should use whatever loader has the mods that you want to play with. Anything else is kind of irrelevant. For a modder, I am hoping to make the documentation good and approachable. And that shrimp just took 1,000,000 damage, okay? So, next note says, the end goal of Chasm, at least for ASI, was to allow writing generic transforms for updating mods between MC versions. Is that something your new ASM framework would enable? Is it just a mixin but in JSON, or does it allow for mass ASM? So, you can do mass ASM with it. I'm not sure to what extent will be built into it, but you can always extend it with new types of transforms and new types of class target. Like, something I've thought of is you could have a class target that targets all classes that extend from a certain class. Like, that's something you could do. The implementation would have to be careful, though. So, I'm not sure if that would be part of base sushi. I just threw away the first note without thinking. Someone sent in a note, started with, what was the purpose of locking the main libraries or something? But it cuts off after that. Whoever that was, if you do another one, maybe it will work. So what's the reasoning for using JSON over JSON 5 in terms of development? So actually, it's technically not JSON, it's JSON-C, because I added comment support to my JSON parser. The file extension is actually .sushi. JSON-C instead of JSON-5, though, I don't like JSON-5. And that's it. Okay, this is the metaprogramming question. Yeah, I answered that one. Favorite type of Cichlid? Again, Trophius.
I have a question. So will you so do you know about JSON patching, like the RFC?
I am aware of it.
Well, I have an idea, a cursed idea for transformers. So if you do plan on making that the .sushi files to be the ultimate format, technically, couldn't you, would there be a way through like loader plugins, or would it be considered to allow people to transform the .sushi files and maybe add support for like for the through JS1 patching, like Lily was saying, how you can transform transformers. I think that would be interesting.
It is interesting, but it needs a lot more thought than I can give for a it needs more thought that I can give right now to give a response in a reasonable amount of time. That's probably something more long term to think about.
Also, does this have a website or something? Like or like a
It
GitHub?
does. It has both. Website has the GitHub on it. I'm gonna put it in chat.
Okay.
Okay, so that first question came back through, this time actually readable. So, what's the point of locking the main libraries behind only one way of distribution? It was developed through modular. So, modular development does allow you to. It does have benefits with like you can have the projects in parallel. Uh, and it lets you organize things better. But distributing the modules causes problems, which has been a thing on Fabric. With like if people bundle one Fabric API module, well, no, if people depend on one Fabric API module, which is what they should be doing technically, like people should only depend on the ones they need. But the problem is if you do that, then users will get error messages like you're missing Fabric Block API v1, and where do you get a Fabric Block API v1? Most users probably have no clue what that is or where to get it, and will not know that it's just bundled in Fabric API. Where can we contribute? I put the website in chat. There's a GitHub link there. The website also has a lot of information that was in this talk. I think this talk is pretty much a superset of it. But yeah, you can get the GitHub there, and there's code. This note just says, will it create? Well, create fabric does not touch any fabric internals, so a hypothetical fabric bridge should work with it. But native create on Cichlid is something I've thought of. It would be a good benchmark for how complete Cichlibs is, but it would take a while, and I don't think it was ever really like a serious thought. It would be cool, but it would take a while. Did the mic break? Did that do anything?
Oh wait, sorry, I wasn't speaking. I have a question about the okay, now I kind of forgot it already. It was, oh yeah, Mixin. Uh so with regarding Mixin, would you have to rewrite Mixin? Because I know Chasm was the goal was to rewrite Mixin to be a front end. Would you have to do that for Sushi to get, for example, Fabric mods working? Or is that something you're
So
considering?
a fabric layer could go through the mod, find all the mixins, and convert that to sushi files.
So kind of like a less cursed, like patch 2 Mixin thing.
Not really. It's kind of mixin to thing very similar to mixin in a different format. Is the core API is it loaded in dynamically? Turning off parts not needed via plugins. I'm not sure what this question means. I think you mean if a mod doesn't need it, is it enabled? Oh. Okay. Next. This one just says click me. Will it support jar and jar or similar method? Yes, but it does not yet. That is planned, but it will definitely have that in the future. Is the base plugin in the plugins folder so you can delete it? No, it is just a class in Cichlid. So it just says, you know what that means, fish. Yippee! What's the reasoning for using OpenGL 3.2? Are 1.16.5 end users, as example, unable to make use of Cichlid? So I'm not sure what. So currently, Cichlid, the loader, is built with Java 8, and it can run on any Minecraft version. But I'm not sure if that's an aspect worth keeping. And I'll have to think about that. Because, like, for older versions, people have settled on their mod loaders. I'm not sure if it would be very useful to support every version ever. And whatever I determine for that will affect other stuff that gets used.
Also, I want to add to that. I think technically, in theory, you could manage to get later versions of OpenGL running on something that only requested a lower version, because at least I was able to do that, but I don't know much about older versions of OpenGL, but I know that with 3.2 you can get like 4.6 working as long as your computer supports it. So
the 3.2 requirement is because that's the minimum requirement of modern Minecraft.
Yeah.
The actual it's not because that's what Minecraft uses, because on older versions it's not what it uses. But that doesn't matter because the GUI, pretty much no matter what, has to be a forked JVM, which is already what Fabric and Quilt do. Which it's pretty standard to do that. So next note, what makes Cichlid better for the average end user? That is one I already answered. Sushi should be capable of being implemented under Fabric, Quilt, etc. So in theory, yes, but to take full advantage of it, you need kind of the whole ecosystem to. You kind of need the whole ecosystem to work with it. Like you need, for Sushi to be fully utilized, you need the Gradle plugin to support it, or source transformations. And if you don't have the source transformations, then like you might as well just use a mixin. How would Cichlid get loaded? Would it be a Java agent JVM argument? Yes, that is how Java agents load. The same as unzip for those who have used it. Also, before someone asks, you can stack Java agents. You just need to have the argument twice. So yes, you can use Cichlid with thumbs up.
I have a random question. So much in the way that, say, people have gotten Mindustry to launch via Prism, is that theoretically possible to do Cichlid on a different Java game with enough refactoring, if that makes sense, for the
So
non-Minecraft parts?
So Cichlid as is, like you really could run it on whatever if you lie to it. Like that's how it's tested in development. I have a Gradle sub-project that just has a few classes, and I load Cichlid on top of it. I tell it that it's Minecraft 1.21.4, but it doesn't need to know the truth. You could theoretically do the same for anything, but if you want to make it really support something else, it would be a pretty trivial fork. But that's not something I want to deal with in Cichlid itself. Like, I don't want, like, Fabric's game provider system. It's overkill. How can NeoForge/Fabric end users get started importing to Cichlid? Currently, you cannot, but I'm hoping to change that in the near future. But once I get stuff usable, then I guess just set up a Cichlid project, port your mixins to Sushi. A lot of mix importing will be pretty one-to-one because it is heavily inspired by it. And code that touches Minecraft would not need to change because it's still Minecraft. But of course, you would need to replace the mod loader APIs you use. What license would all Cichlid be focusing? So, I was going to update the repositories with licenses, but I kind of rushed with everything else. They will all. So the ones that are currently licensed, there's a handful of small libraries that are MIT because they're little libraries. But the main Cichlid, Cichlibs, Sushi. Well, Sushi will also be MIT. I don't remember if I added its license file yet. But Cichlibs and Cichlid will be maybe LGPL. I haven't fully decided yet, but it will be an open source one, widely usable. Can I contribute? If not now, when? Depends on what you want to contribute to. Sushi is open to contributions right now. I have a small list of things that could be contributed pinned in the Discord right now. Yeah, Max made a couple PRs for implementing some. So yeah, that's something that could be done now. Cichlibs needs it needs to be set up first. And then contributions can kind of just happen when that happens. Cichlid itself, I guess it's open to contributions, but I don't know what would be contributed right now. No, it is not Crayon licensed. It's not. I was considering. No, first of all, it's not Polyform. Second of all, first of all, Polyform is not Crayon. Second of all, it's not Polyform. I was considering Polyform, but I never actually did that. Right now, it's technically all rights reserved because there's just no license file. But it will be an open source license. I think LGPL, but I gotta double check and actually decide on one. Does it have polyform? I guess I did commit that, but yeah, that'll be changing.
What is all of this goop here? What is this?
I don't see why it wouldn't work with nil.
It shouldn't be here.
So,
I have no clue if it will.
one thing that I've heard from people is that they're kind of worried that like drama will form from like having a community space, especially like a Discord and stuff. So do you agree with that? Are you worried that like a community space for Cichlid will cause drama? Or do you think it's not going to be an issue?
I don't think it will be an issue because like it will be moderated. I think Quilt was like uniquely vulnerable to that kind of thing. It's not a concern for me. How much Java transform methods will be available for mods, not plugins? AKA, would it support transforming Java internals, unlocking modules like from Java Agent? So I'm considering just exposing instrumentation directly for mods to just get it. Because if I don't, then inevitably someone will just write a gross hack to get it themselves. So I guess you could do whatever you want with that, really. And you can transform Java internals with retransformation, like I did with the class loader. So you could do that. Will the API breaking changes between versions? Yes, this is not Bucket. Ideally, there will not be breaking changes on the same version. There will not be unless there's a major problem. Which is pretty much how everything else works, I think. So yeah, API should be stable in a single version and break across versions. Are there any other questions? Not currently, but eventually, yes. So that is almost the full hour spent. So I guess that is the end. So thank you everyone for listening and for asking questions. I'm going to go make that thread in the project channel soon. And that should be everything.
Give it up for Jay, guys. I'm so proud that someone I've worked with for so long.
If anyone else has more questions, then just wait for the thread to open, and then you can ask there.
You know what that means? Fish. I am actually really proud of Jay, though. Honestly, someone I've been working with for so long. You know, I gotta stop my recorder.
Carter and Jay